Which one do we start with? It was in Wisconsin that for what it's worth, the Barack Obama appointed judge chewed L. Lynn Wood, and Sidney Powell out, but proper as far as judicial chewing outs go. And for anybody who wants to get a taste for the practice and how annoying and soul crushing it is, if a judge doesn't like you, they're going to pick on your silly mistakes to make you look stupid in front of the court, and in this case, in front of the general public. So this judge issued an order today. I don't actually fully appreciate what the purpose of the order was, other than just to notify the parties of deficiencies in their pleadings. But the judge basically said, your complaint was not verified, which I take to mean sworn in, which it was a procedural requirement for injunctive relief. You didn't ask for a hearing date. You asked for an emergency, an expedited process, but didn't explain why. You didn't file the first lawsuit, or you didn't serve the first version of the lawsuit. And then what? And then you said you were going to file some documents that were not attached to the lawsuit. The order basically nitpicked at everything that was improperly done on a procedural level in the lawsuit. Also, just basically saying you didn't ask for a hearing. So now the defendants have 20 days or something to file a contestation, which effectively makes the proceedings irrelevant because it's going to go past the required time. It's the ugly side of law where the judge can embarrass you and will embarrass you if they want to, and you give them an opportunity. I'm inclined to be very forgiving on Wood and Powell because they're drafting a tremendous amount of proceedings. They have, I don't know how the size of the team, but it's just, you will have mistakes like this that you can remedy otherwise without being publicly humiliated, which is what the judge set out to do. What's going to be the impact of that order? What are they going to do to remedy these proceedings? And are they beyond remedy?
I don't know quite what their collective objective is, because a similar problem happened in Georgia. Once they got a temporary restraining order, they didn't get all of what they wanted, and so they appealed it, even though generally you don't appeal a temporary restraining order. It deprives the court of jurisdiction, so the court can't hold a hearing on an expedited basis. And that judge made that point because he was one of the few judges that was willing to, hear them out, give them a fair hearing. So when you're spoiling the relationships with good judges, you know what's going to happen with the bad ones. So the judges are seeing that they can start to greenlight each other's harsher and escalating criticism. So they did make basic mistakes. They referenced wanting to make sure all the security cameras in Detroit were safe in a case filed in Wisconsin. They had a plaintiff who turned out wasn't a plaintiff, said he had no idea he was a named plaintiff in the case. These are like core mistakes. And so I'm seeing a rush to file suits that are often very big and very complicated and very complex, that don't incorporate skilled local lawyers that are experienced litigators in those courtrooms. I could have told you about the Wisconsin judge in particular, that once you drew her, you needed to do certain things. Let's just say she's the female Judge Sullivan. I may have cases in front of her, so I got to be diplomatic. But everyone else will know what I mean. I've gone to bat with overt battle. I had a federal judge in the Eastern District of Wisconsin cuss at me repeatedly. Now it turned out useful because I got him recused from a future case I needed him recused from. But he fixed a jury pool in my case, so I'm still bitter at him. But yeah, so I mean, you got some interesting judges there. It's not, I wouldn't be in the Eastern District of Wisconsin if I could avoid it. Now, Western District's not exactly like light years better, but there's at least one or two okay. Again, at this point, I would go to state court. You're not going to get relief from federal court in all likelihood.
And people need to appreciate that some people will view something as confidence versus arrogance depending on their overall perspective of the situation. You're not giving them a hard time for the sake of giving them a hard time. These are legitimate issues that people have to appreciate. Strategic issues. It is always easier for those who are not involved in doing the work to not make mistakes because they're not doing the work. But it doesn't mean that you hold back and don't state what you think is, objective problems, mistakes, and strategy. And also being harsh on them for procedural issues, for cut and paste errors, which are obviously the case when you reference servers in a different state in another state lawsuit. These things happen. So they're not ideal, but this is not a question of giving them a hard time just to sit back and say, look how easy it is for everyone to pick on their typos. One thing we should clarify, the temporary restraining order that they got in Georgia which was a 10-day temporary restraining order. I think it was 10 days, which is what they are. TROs, they're like provisional injunctions, from what I understand in Canada. They last until the hearing on the temporary injunction or the interlocutory injunction. They're only supposed to last the bare minimum to prevent the irreparable harm on an urgent basis. You get to the longer term injunction afterwards. So they got an order from the court enjoining the destruction or the reformatting or the seizing of the voting machines. I didn't appreciate this nuance. They appealed that decision because I guess they wanted more, but explain that in so appealing the TRO, temporary restraining order in Georgia, the court loses jurisdiction. And what happens to that TRO that was issued?
The TRO stays in place, but the Court of Appeals can, of course, expand it or reverse it. But the problem is twofold. One, you're giving the 11th Circuit a chance to invalidate it and gut your case, which is where they're likely to go if you understand the 11th Circuit in these kind of cases. Remember, the 11th Circuit didn't even give relief to Bush and Bush v. Gore. So the predecessor parallel versions of that went up through the federal court system. And then secondly, you just had another federal judge citing 11th Circuit precedent just tell Lynn Wood that he doesn't have standing to sue. And the same claim is going to be made here. Here you get a judge willing to grant you temporary relief out of the gate without that. And he even went further than he had to. Like initially gave relief. Then the state made clear, hey, by the way, these parties aren't even parties. And so he pulled back the relief. And then he gave a third order that said, well, I think I can go this far. So he went beyond the call of duty, which is going to be hard for any federal judge to do in an election contest. And they reward him by saying you should have gone further. And by taking it up to the 11th Circuit, basically means the hearing that's scheduled for Friday can't happen unless the 11th Circuit rules before then, because he doesn't have jurisdiction while it's pending in the 11th Circuit. So and that's why he wrote a more delicate ruling. He didn't take any pot shot. I mean, here they made more mistakes in that filing in terms of like spelling errors, typos, incorrect references, you name it. He didn't say anything about any of it. So he's going out of his way not to take shots at him, and he's going out of his way to give them relief wherever he thinks he can. And their response was to whack him and take him up to the appeals where they're not likely to win at all. And he just made that point in a very sort of real gentle order. He said, by the way, I can't really do a hearing on Friday because you guys chose to appeal it. And by the way, there usually isn't a right to appeal a temporary restraining order. I mean, he could have said that a lot harsher. So put it this way, the critics that see this as a big grift, who think they're just filing suits to look good, but don't plan on being able to actually win, but want to make it look like they fought hard and then say the judicial system was corrupt, they're doing the kind of things that keep reinforcing that. So I don't think that's actually their objective, but they're doing the things that it's harder and harder for me to argue to that other side in defense of these cases, given these. Now, my view is this is the product of not having election lawyers, not having skilled lawyers who know that local area. And by the way, they were told this before they filed these suits. So this isn't quarterback second overnight, Monday night quarterbacking, as I think the phrase is. Monday morning. That's it. Monday morning quarterbacking. It isn't Monday morning quarterbacking. They were told this before. They were told this. They needed these people involved before. People had suggested to them their role probably shouldn't be lead litigator role. They didn't like hearing that, and so they marched on forward. So, and then you get today's show, where Lynn Wood appears to be trying to imitate Donald. He almost thinks he is Donald Trump. I mean, he's wearing the hat. He's got the red tie. He's got the overcoat that Trump likes to wear in the cold. He's doing his revival speech, walking back and forth and doing this. And he's burning down every bridge left in Georgia. And I get the hardcore Trump base laps that up. That's not a good court of public opinion, appealing to legislators or appealing to Congress members. That's a establish a record for the future argument. That is not an argument to win now. That's an argument, in fact, to lose now.
Well, and I don't necessarily fully appreciate the impact or the scope of this. They had, from what I saw, 400,000 people watching online, which is impressive. I mean, monumental.
And that was just one streamer. I'm sure millions watched.
So you have, let's just say you have at the very least 500,000, probably over 1 million people watching. They are calling for a boycott of the Georgia elections. If that happens, you get 2 Dems getting seats in the Senate, which gives the Dems a majority, or a tie in the Senate, which can have disastrous impacts from a policy perspective. If you're not a Democrat, can have wonderful consequences if you are a Democrat. But so, I mean, what is this? What do you make of the fact that so many people are watching this, tuning into it? Is it going to have an impact on the Georgia election?
I think it's 2 things. Both of them, Powell and Wood, have done a good job promoting their pitch by coming up with the most dramatic, craziest story. They drew the most attention. Trump did this in 2016. He always took the hardest position to get the most attention on something to outmaneuver his adversaries. So this is, thus, hey, I'm not just going to ban people. I'm going to ban all Muslims from coming into the country. I mean, he did actually say that at one point. That wasn't the order he ultimately signed, but he did it for political reasons. He knew, he's like, I bet this will dominate. So Scott Adams explained this well, and it fits within certain psychologies. So they have adopted the most extreme positions, and from it they have got the most attention and most validation. Even though they are the least experienced in election law, they are the least educated in how elections actually function, and they've been making claims that those of us familiar with these elections and election law have found highly questionable and unlikely to be proven, and often undermining the president's position in the court of law and in the courts of politicians and the courts of Congress, likely helping him with the court of public opinion. I mean, there's a reason why Russiagate will always be believed by at least half of the left. You'll never convince them that Trump wasn't secretly colluding with the Russians to steal and hack the election. They'll believe that, we will have a portion of the right that will believe that, the reverse version of that for this election. And I understand that. That's naturally appealing to us. The easiest thing to do, if my goal was to raise money or raise notoriety, then the way to go is, hey, the computers did it with the Chinese, with the Venezuelans, and all the enemies of Trump conspired together, and they magically put 5 to 6% of the vote everywhere. And even though statistical evidence would refute me, even though documentary evidence would not support me, even though testimonial evidence would not back me up, I would not care, because I would know that a portion of the audience doesn't care about that. If that was my objective. And I'm not saying that was their objective. I think they really believe that the ship they've gone sailing on, but I don't think it's a ship that's warranted in evidence or will be proven in time. And they haven't behaved like people trying to actually win. They behaved like people trying to win in the court of public opinion. I mean, Lin Wood is calling for federal martial law.
Okay,
this is not sane behavior, folks.
Well, so someone had asked that. Let me get the super chat while we're on, because it was Maria. No, it wasn't that. Oh, who was it? Someone was. Can Trump? Okay, here we go. Jessica Cora, early on super chat. Can Trump use the Insurrection Act and the NSPD 51? I don't know what that is, to void all federal elections for national security and hold a new election administered solely by the military under martial law? The case has been made.
One, that's a terrible idea. If you wanted to completely discredit Trump, do that. Or try to do that. By the way, it wouldn't happen. But just try to say, because then he looks like a crazy, all the caricatures of him then look true. He's the dictator who wants to use military control, who won't honor democratic limits, who won't honor democratic restraints, won't honor democratic elections. That is exactly the wrong path to pursue. And by the way, the military, there is zero chance they would go along with him. So that's why as soon as he started going down that lunatic path, this is what happens when you live in QAnon world. Sorry, QAnon folks. And remember, if you hate me, you can go to Locals, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. And if you become a subscriber, I'll actually read your trolling comments. But that's the only place you're guaranteed for me to read them.
We're going to have a new running ticker in all of our streams, is first movie reference, first book reference, and first time Robert gets on QAnon's case. People think you spend too much time on it, but you have your reasons, and I'm not one to criticize.
Because this is where it leads to. This is how do you get someone who a year ago was considered a very serious lawyer, who 2 weeks ago was being given a lot of credibility in this legal, such that 500,000 people on just one streaming channel are watching him live, get to the point where he thinks it's a good idea to tell the president of the United States to disband the country and form military control and have martial law. I do think there's no scenario in which that's a good idea, folks. But when you get into that world, You start to believe things that are not credible, and you have a echo chamber that repeats crazy ideas and reinforces your crazy ideas, to where you get up and you're starting to talk about, we're going to walk around Jericho and the walls of Jericho will fall. And look, and for those who have any doubt about it, I grew up in the Baptist tradition. I grew up in revival churches here in that, those versions of, I'm all fine with all that. But there's a difference between utilizing it in an appropriate setting and time where it be politically effective, and sounding like you're part of a something out of a Escape from LA movie character. That you're that kind of would-be presidential candidate supporter. You don't want to look like that. That's what his critics, and notice Trump pushed back against that today. He let them speak, and then he goes out and does and he does none of that nonsense. He says, all I want is an honest election. The American people deserve an honest election. Please let's count the signatures, and please let's make sure illegal votes don't count. That's it. And he goes, and he said it. He said what he told me. I don't care if I lost an election as long as I lost it fair and square. But I want to know, was it fair and square? And aren't the American people entitled to know? And he didn't push any of this martial law. Let's have the military take over the country. Let's have new elections with the military guarding the gates. None of this. This is what happens when you're in an echo chamber that talks about people secretly being down at Gitmo, and Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton are about to get arrested tomorrow. When you start living that world and you think it's true, you say things as crazy as what Lynn Wood said that are self-discrediting, that the left had a field day making fun of today, because they say, here's the people telling you there's a problem with the election. People that are talking about bringing down Jericho, and people that are telling you that the Gitmo is being active and the military is coming to run the country. This is not who you want vouching for you, folks.
And I think everybody just needs to appreciate that. The idea of declaring martial law, I mean, like you say, it is the embodiment of the dictator refusing to accept it. It would be depicted as North Korea. I know people believe that it's the only alternative right now because the system is so broken. But it would be the worst possible solution that would not yield the result that people want it to yield. And I'm reading some of the comments. Some people disagree and think the military is on Trump's side, but it cannot be a military solution to this without reaffirming the exact dictatorial accusations that have been leveled against Trump and his supporters for the last 4 years.
And look at any nation that has relied upon military control and rule, and ask yourself whether that's ever turned out good long term. That's never turned out good long term. There's no example where the military temporarily took over for any purpose that didn't mean the military didn't run your life in time. And they'll be happy. And the idea that the high-ranking military, what part of Mattis admitting now he had conversations while he was Secretary of Defense with the Director of National Intelligence to do a coup against the president? I mean, he admitted those kind of conversations. Do people still think the high-ranking people in the military are on the Trump populist side? They have never been. They've just admitted that they lied to the president for 4 years about the troop presence in Syria so that they didn't have to approve his orders to withdraw troops from there. So that's QAnon nonsense. That's what that is.